truthfully, I'm sitting back there thinking, how did such good intentions of us get so screwed up in communication? And I hate to say the answer was because you screwed up. Not meaning you, meaning me. I had a conversation with different people, and I realized I may have broken protocol. I asked you to trust me that if I did break protocol on what process I should have followed, it is out of ignorance and never of any intent to disrespect anybody. Very brief on this. When the eruption was going on, and one day you counting up to 100, the next day 200, and then 500, and 700, and numerous farms. And those of you who went to the Orchid Show, I think saw the list of nurseries that was destroyed, and people that was not listed, like goat farms and those, precious small type of businesses that was out there. Along the way, you realize fully that unless we do something very, very different to help them, we're going to put a lot of people in a long-term recovery, and that for some may never recover. I'm just thinking of a couple of people because of age. I don't think they're even going to try. So this one day, just looking out this window and talking about the past, the Kaiko project came to be of what we possibly can try. We did meet with the riders or the heads of some of the Kaiko thing, and they, gave us a history of it, but also told us things are so much more complex today because of different laws. I said to this body, I was told that we must expedite the development of the plan, conceptual plan. There's no one on staff to do it except those behind me that was already working 7 days a week, and I gave them a deadline later on. Just come up with a conceptual plan. It is only recently that I'm finding out that I may have violated some kind of protocols. It was my understanding that we need to present it to the council. It's a conceptual plan. I know I irritated because they told me so. Some legislatures that they felt that I should have contacted them. And I should have, in some degree, and I'm going to try to catch up on some of that. I asked the council to please, if you can, forgive the kind of protocol mistakes I might have made with this body. There was never any intent. We were trying to beat the deadline, come up with some ideas that would help these people, that would be tangible, and that's what we presented to you. The package is big, the dream is big, but I think it's very necessary, and I ask for your, time so they can present what they wrote. So thank you very much.
Mahalo, Mayor Kim, for giving us some of the background of what's been going on. And Council, if you are okay, if we move forward with the presentation. Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Michael Yee from Planning Director. Got Roy Takimoto from the Mayor's office next to me. Diane Lay was supposed to be part of this presentation, but she had a commitment today in Kohala, and I'll have to substitute. We're going to substitute our voices in for her. 4 weeks ago, we were asked to speak on the housing recovery efforts. There were questions regarding economic and agricultural recovery, which we did not specifically address, but that did not mean that the administration was not taking a broad view of impacts, gathering data, analyzing options, and preparing for the ask of a lifetime. An ask that will have lasting impacts for generations to come on this island. Before we get going, I was pondering an analogy of sorts this morning to help try to explain, what's been swirling around since even yesterday. I heard a lot at the folks testifying. We're tasked with having to put together this puzzle, a very complex puzzle, and it's thousands of pieces of this puzzle, and you throw them out on the table, and we're all out there trying to piece it together. And at some point you realize the puzzle is not two-dimensional, but it's three-dimensional. It's really like a pyramid. All the sides have to fit together. And what happens, and you're hearing this a lot, is everybody is so close to it that they can only see a couple of pieces. At best, they may see just one side or two sides of the pyramid. They can't see what's happening on the other side of the pyramid. Okay? And so everybody's speaking a certain truth to the matter. But there are so many complex pieces to this that many of us, hundreds within the county, have been dedicated 3 months to trying to piece this puzzle together. And it's being done with, hopefully in a collaborative manner at all levels. And there's still areas for improvement. The mayor spoke to that yesterday and today. And if there are folks that need to be more involved, we certainly want to welcome that. But it's not for a lack of intent that we're trying to exclude folks. It's just really, we're just that busy. So I just kind of wanted to begin with that today and thinking about that. And as the mayor mentioned, we are dreaming big, and you're going to hear that today. There was some thoughts that we aren't going to dream big enough. If you've heard me speak here before, I dream big, and I believe what we're going to put forth is the beginning of that. Just a quick overview. We're going to talk about impacts, review the recovery planning, then talk about how this has to be a joint effort with a bunch of partners, and then we'll get to the potential action that we may need from the county. As always, need to center us on guiding principles. Don't need to belabor the first 6. We heard them at the last presentation, but we have added a 7th, prudence. Prudence is basic decisions on the decisions on the best available data with appropriate phasing to account for uncertainty. And as in within life, sometimes these principles go up and rub against each other. Sometimes trying to be prudent and trying to be timely won't always work hand in hand as easily as we want it to. But these are our guiding principles. So let's start with impacts. Take this image in of Kapoho Bay before and after. And it's not hard to imagine what people are feeling, the loss that people feel. You hear it in people's voices every day, and it's a tough situation, and I think we certainly know that. Trying to categorize the impacts, we have 4 categories. Communities have been completely destroyed, disrupted. You heard it from many of them yesterday: hardship, frustration, stress. Within housing, we've lost 700 homes, many others that are inaccessible. Economically, Hawaii Volcanoes National Park is closed, and that's having certainly a big ripple effect. Challenges now and ahead to recover and shift the business model is necessary. Natural and cultural resources, agricultural loss of crops, some short and some long-term, and loss of land, tree, crops, and buildings long-term, and high losses. Lost a portion of Malamaki and access to the fishery at Pohiki. This slide summarizes some of the impacts, some of the numbers, some of the metrics. 1,700 acres of land affected and 100 plus producers. 90 plus vacation rentals lost, plus cancellations of hotels and rentals. the slide was, we've updated it or got it updated figures. Now $65 million in economic losses and growing. And then losses to government roads, water lines, and power lines. Recovery priorities. Mayor Kim and his administration are working closely with federal and state partners as well as the nonprofit and private sector to mobilize resources to respond to ongoing eruption and stand-up recovery efforts. Certainly you've heard that safety has been our number one priority, responsible for public safety 24/7. Housing, we're trying to target a range of transitional and permanent housing solutions to meet varying financial and time-critical household situations, including requests to FEMA to support household case management for enhanced efforts to meet local needs. Economic, county and state costs for recovery can be matched with substantial federal resources. Current efforts include grant applications for financial literacy, EDA planning, mitigation, grant writing assistance from International Economic Development Council and HIEMA. Visitor sector immediate action include county funds for ads and flyers, familiarization, tours, and education to counter sensational news. Partner with HTA provided substantial cash infusion for marketing and promotion campaigns. Visitor sector long-term resources secure and asked to address replacement Hawaii Volcanoes National Park and an enhanced product, including site improvements, signage, Bayfront Trails next phase, Banyan Drive redevelopment to replace vacation rentals and oceanfront recreation. Agricultural solutions include immediate and intermediate support for access to public and private lands to relocate and reestablish, education as to available programs and alternative crops, requests for expanded low-interest loan resources and insurance. Long-term redevelopment focus on federal and state resources to identify and secure permanent housing, infrastructure, parks, including pools and Bayfront Trails, charter school, and redevelopment agency to find solutions to complex issues. Finally, community engagement includes weekly PAHOA community meetings, other engagement in carports, organizations, churches, schools, Puna Community Development Plan Action Committee. With this, I'm going to turn it over to Roy.
The impacts that Michael just
Roy, could you just state your name again for the record?
okay, Roy Takimoto with the Mayor's Office. The impacts that Michael just reiterated, in terms of the legislative package, that sets the need in terms of something like a preamble. Once we establish the need, then we need to describe what the vision is and the strategies. So the vision, the strategies, what we are thinking is to organize it in a way that can cut across a common language of the federal government, FEMA in particular, as well as picking up and correlating the language of our general plan and whatever state programs are out there. And so that common language of organization is this framework called in FEMA language, response, what is S? RSF, response something framework. Support functions. Thank you. Okay, so it looks very familiar to us. Community planning, natural and cultural resources, economic development, housing, health and social services, infrastructure. So that is the organization of how we'll be describing the strategic plan as well as the funding needs. So in terms of the funding requirements, this is where we need to emphasize that it's not just the county. It needs to be a real collaborative partnership effort. And the funding sources in particular need to cut across all levels of government, from county, state, federal, even the nonprofit and private industry. And these sources are not necessarily typical sources that we think of in everyday budget. These are pretty much customized for disaster response. So to even be aware of what those potential sources are, particularly at the federal level, is quite a learning experience on all of our parts. So to identify the federal sources, first they need to know what are our needs. So I'll get into that on the next slide. But once we identify the needs, then we can gather the federal agencies together, and they can help us say, oh, our program can address this need, our program can address that need. And so what we are planning to do is assemble what in federal government lingo is, they call it a federal workshop, where we, in a couple weeks, we already made the request. So we have FEMA partners working with us who are touching base with the other federal agencies, HUD, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and other pertinent agencies they think that could bring resources to this event. So we'll sit with them and they'll help us figure out what potential federal sources could come into play. Now in terms of the needs, we went through a real rough exercise sitting among some of our agency people to identify the kind of where we want to be, how we want to respond to this disaster. And this graph kind of just shows you the relative cost comparison. So of course housing is a big cost. The response effort ongoing, should this event even last like the next 5 years or so, we would need resources to keep our emergency operation going 24/7. Infrastructure is another big cost. And of course, the planning for the impacted area, if we are going to consider buying out development rights, ownership rights, then we would need a lot of resources to cover that expense. So this graph anticipates all those types of costs, and this is kind of like the relative breakdown of that. So in terms of next steps and how we go forward, knowing that we have to put together this legislative package, at the same time, everything cannot stop while we're waiting for this package to go forward. So what are the steps that we see over the next couple months? So the main categories of our next steps is we can go forward with some of the plans and studies. We need expertise to help us start the planning. For the financing part, that includes the legislative package. But in order to put together the legislative package, we need to understand our expenses and the funding sources. So for lack of a better term, we're just calling it sources and uses pro forma. At the same time, we can start, and we have started, with some grant and loan applications. And then we can go forward on transitional solutions. We need to get people out of the emergency shelters, so we need transitional housing. We need to find replacement farm lands for the farmers. We need to start rebuilding our visitor industry. So these are things that we can continue working on while we working on the legislative package and this next big step, which is the formation of a redevelopment agency. This redevelopment agency, you are familiar with the concept. Mayor Kim referred to it. That was the mechanism used for Kaiko redevelopment. There's a redevelopment agency for Banyan Drive that was recently formed and active. This particular redevelopment agency is different from Banyan Drive. It's more like Kaiko. Under HRS Chapter 53, the county has the authority to establish redevelopment agencies for blighted areas, which is Banyan Drive, how Banyan Drive's redevelopment agency was formed. But under HRS 53, we can also form a redevelopment agency for disasters. So similar to Kaiko, this is the basis for this redevelopment agency. So it will require a council resolution to form this redevelopment agency. The agency will require a huge budget to staff and implement all the different ideas that are going to be funded through the legislative package for the longer term solutions. And another item that the council would need to act on in terms of in relation to the redevelopment agency is to approve the redevelopment, or in this case, recovery plan. So in short, where the council will play a big role is, of course, I covered the redevelopment agency. The legislative package, we are thinking it would be a joint effort. We're not sure what it's called, whether it's something called a joint resolution that can be intergovernmental, county, state, and eventually using that to present to Congress for a congressional ask. But whatever format it takes, the council would need your buy-in to this document. So this document, we hope to have a draft to present to you by maybe the end of this week and ask for your input, and we can meet with you individually or however you want within the Sunshine Law to brainstorm with you and get your thoughts on how this package should be revised and going forward. So we're open for questions and comments, suggestions.
Okay. Well, mahalo for the presentation, and I'll just open it up to the rest of the committee with questions and. Anybody want to, Ms. O'Hara?
Didn't
Right.
have my light on, but I'll start off. This is lacking a lot of detail. And we have, from newspaper reports, understood that we have a potential $550 million package. And I'm assuming this pie where we have the legislative package funding request, these percentages are percentages of that 550 million. Is that what we are going to put together? Because I don't see that dollar amount anywhere in this presentation. Okay, because it is at this point that we have to move from a very, very broad conceptual plan to something specific. If we're to have a real plan by your proposed date of August 14th, which is less than a week away. So I'm wondering, I see that you have in the pie FEMA money, but I'm not really sure how this interplays with that $550 million request. You also have nonprofit money there, but I'm not really sure how that plays in with the $550 million request. So what we're really missing here is the actual plan, the details. What is the permanent housing and what's the estimated expenses? There's so much. This is nice conceptual outline of how to do a plan, but we don't really have a plan. So you're showing something there. What is that?
It's what we get to you by Friday. If you can read Excel spreadsheets, it's several tabs long. And so we're counting on you to be able to digest it. But if you cannot, then we're available for questions.
Is that something that's available to us now, to the spreadsheet stuff?
It doesn't have the sources.
Okay.
We're waiting for input from other agencies to get the sources.
Okay, and you'll have that by Friday, you say? Okay, that's going to be helpful. On, I don't know, the second slide, guiding principles of this conceptual plan, I think it was choice, timeliness, and collaboration. And the collaboration piece is what I think we've kind of fallen short of. The mayor gave us some comments at the beginning where he said he may have made some mistakes in pulling together this plan. And I think one of those that's concerning to us is the lack of involvement of actual elected officials in the planning process. I've tried very hard, and I've had to really try to be part of any meetings and find out after the fact that the meeting occurred, I wasn't invited or I didn't receive the minutes. And this has kind of been an ongoing problem for not only me, but other legislators who are present in the room. For us to actually collaborate, there needs to be an attempt to pull together not only the administrative branch, but the legislative branch. Otherwise, I don't think that we're going to be well received at the state legislature if this is strictly coming from the administrative side. So I appreciate that you're coming here with a very conceptual plan and hopefully providing additional details by Friday so that we can study over the weekend, which it happens to be an election this weekend. Sorry, guys. And come back with input to you next week, Tuesday, the 14th, on this plan with whatever details are fleshed out. But I was hoping we would get more details today on what you're thinking constitutes the $550 million package than what we have in front of us right now. So that's just what I'm seeing here and concerned about. So thank you.
Ms. Poindexter,
Yeah.
or did you want to respond?
Yeah, on Councilmember O'Hara, I handle the housing side. We all have our silos that we work in. Within the housing side, you've been part of the housing group that meets every couple of weeks. We have 5 subcommittees that are active working on that. You've been invited to all those that you want to participate in. Within the housing side, there's a lot of tie-in for you to be there, and everything around housing, there's been input from that group that has formulated everything within housing. I don't work in the other areas, so I can't speak to the other areas. But I'm not sure how much more you want me to involve you besides you wanting to do my job in trying to decide some of these things. At some point, we pull together, we get all the comments, and we're formulating the general ask that needs to be made. The state ledge, FEMA, at the disaster relief side on the congressional level, they don't need a project specific to the dollar. What they need to have is the conceptual idea over what kinds of projects you want to do, and generally using some standard which to be able to put forth a number that makes some general sense. So if we say we want to do transitional housing, we can do this. If we want to do renovations of certain multi-family buildings, we'll need this kind of dollar amount. And we're trying to piece together, and we've pieced that together, hopefully, into this legislative package within the housing side. So, you know, on the collaboration side within housing, I hope I've met your expectations on that side. I'm not sure how much more I can do.
I thank you for that, Mr. Yee. It was the case that it took a while for the subcommittee. Ms. Leloy performed really well in her subcommittee. I was assigned a subcommittee that didn't meet. And so we kind of fell behind. And I appreciate that you're taking in all of that feedback. It's just the case that at this point, I think we may have 5 long-term housing options on the table. At least that's what I saw at the last meeting. And are we actually attaching dollar amounts to those 5 different options? Are we going about it in a different way? I'm not really sure what the outcome of those A, B, C, D, E's were. But that's just the housing piece. And I agree, that is your piece of the puzzle. And there's a lot more, because there's roads and there's agriculture and there's economic development. There's a lot more pieces to the puzzle. I absolutely agree. But that's been very hard to get involved in. I have made every meeting that I've had regarding roads, regarding research, economic development. And it's been difficult because everybody's really busy. So I had to chase Miss Lay for 2 weeks just to have a telephone conversation. 2 weeks. And so it's that collaboration hasn't been really well felt. And I'm not speaking solo. I would say that I'm also representing concerns expressed by some of our state legislators, especially those that represent the district where we've had the heaviest impacts. Although this is an impact felt all over the island and actually all over the state. So, you know, we're trying to look at it holistically, but we also need to drill down and get into the details at this point. So that's all I was asking for. Thank you.
Ms. Poindexter?
Yeah, and thank you for coming and doing the presentation. And, you know, Mayor Kim had stated earlier that he apologizes if some type of process or protocol was missed. And when talking to a couple senators, I mean, you know, they felt that maybe the plan should have been discussed with, they should have been briefed on it first, kind of work with the Hawaii delegation and the leadership from the House and Senate to be able to, because if we're talking about special session, those are extensive meetings with them, and I don't know if any of that had taken place yet or not, and if it didn't, that's where it should have started, the presentation or something to them first. I think that's how I see the protocol, or I think that some of them felt. And I know we have a representative from Representative Joy San Buenaventura here, and also Senator Ruderman. I don't know if this would be the appropriate time that if I could call and ask them about what they feel the protocol should have been. Would that be okay? Yeah. Yeah. Can you Yeah. I just want to, you okay? Go ahead. Do you want to, okay.
Representative Joyce and Buenaventura for Lower Puna. I had a discussion.
Make sure is your
You
microphone
need to
on?
turn your microphone on.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So personally, my ego's not on the line here. I just really want to make sure that the county, when presenting their package to the state legislature, that they do not ruffle feathers and it goes as smoothly as the Kauai package did. The Kauai package was less than 1 week of their request. It was passed and it was funded. I mean, that was how smoothly the Kauai. I know that this disaster is way different in scope and way different in problems, but the big difference, and Senator Ruderman can change me, was basically the administrative team worked with the state legislators and we crafted something really fast, so it didn't need to go through the conferences, the committee meetings, the committee hearings. It went fast, and you folks know that. It went fast. And we were hoping to do the same for Hawaii County, and I know it's not going to be as fast. And so we were hoping I have gone to as many meetings as I could, and I know I missed a number of them because I had to go to a conference in the mainland, but and I really do my best to not be rude, and I really do know that the administration, Michael Lee, Roy Takemoto, Mayor Kim, everybody is working 24/7. I mean, poor Mayor's health is on the line here. We just hope that there would have been more collaboration. Like, I really want to see that Excel spreadsheet. I am getting phone calls, from yesterday and today, telling me, why are they asking for a special session? Why didn't we hear it from you? And I couldn't tell them that. I couldn't tell them that they are asking for a special session now. I know that you folks asked for a special session, and at that time we said that we were more than willing to have one if you folks came up with a plan. I didn't know that there was a plan, and I couldn't tell them that. Even 20 minutes prior to coming here today, had Councilman O'Hara not told me about what was going on right now, I wouldn't be here. But within 20 minutes ago, I got a phone call from House Speaker Saiki saying, how are they funding this $550 million, and why isn't it going through you folks? And he had a number of questions which I couldn't answer because I didn't even know that there was a $550 million ask until I read about it in the paper. So, I really want to help out. It's my island, it's my community. I feel the suffering. I went to the evac centers, and I'm doing as much as I can, and I know Senator Ruderman is too, but it's really difficult to answer the questions, to be able to smooth these things through if we have no idea what the heck is going on. Thank you.
I'm not sure if I should what to add. I would echo what our representative just said. Russell Ruderman, State Senator from Puna, thank you. We all recognize that the county administration has been working as hard as they can. They're all wonderful, smart, good-intentioned people. Strategically speaking, as we approach a special session, it's been expressed to both Representative and myself just today from our legislative leaders that why didn't this come from us? It's a big mistake in the process of happening. I understand the governor can call a special session, but it's us that have to defend it and push it through and request these things and argue for our behalf. To say there's been a lack of collaboration or inclusion of our elected leaders from the district is the biggest understatement I could possibly make. It's been horrible to be excluded, even from committees that I was told I would be a part of. It's been horrible. We can file it all under bad communication if you want. That's fine. And I can forget about all of it. We all have the same goals. We all want to help our island. No one's trying to make a bigger mess than we have. But the head of the Ways and Means Committee called me this morning and says, I can't believe they didn't call us through you. Do you realize how wrong this is? And do you realize why it worked with Kauai? I mean, he's explaining all this stuff to me. In good faith, by the way. I mean, he wants to help. So at some point, if we're going to address the legislature at all, it's appropriate to address it through our elected representatives from the state. Representative and myself need to be involved. We've been locked out of the process up until now. And we still are locked out, and that's okay. But we got to be on the same page if we're going to have this if special session request is going to succeed. We have to be on the same page. So at some point we have to recognize it's not just communication, oh, well, we're not good at communication. No, it's more than that. It's fundamental strategy and protocol that has to be corrected now, and we have to move forward with all of us being on one page. If we're not on one page, it's very likely to fail. I'm not sure if there's anything further to add that you'd like to hear from me. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I just wanted administration to hear that what maybe the protocol should have been, and then maybe, I don't know if somehow we can now make it a point to maybe meet administration to have those meetings with our Hawaii delegation. But thank you, and thank you for being here. Thanks.
Wait.
Drew, he wants to respond.
No.
I apologize.
Go right ahead, Mayor Kim.
Morning, afternoon, I don't even know what day it is. I do know I went to work at 3 o'clock this morning to finish the plan in regards to Hurricane Hester. I know I look at these three people in the back and the others that are not here that in the middle of everything that we're doing, I asked them to do this. I'm going to speak for my frustration in behalf of them. Just imagine for 1 minute, just 1 minute, if we didn't do anything as administration on what was going on, in the midst of what was going on of response. Nobody knows what the ultimate will be. This came about in a just informal meeting with the governor's office, FEMA, and us of the immense destruction that was going on. That our responsibility of emergency response, sheltering, was not going to be enough. But by law, that was our responsibility. It is a harsh realization that we have to do more than that. In a very informal statement of FEMA saying, we want to be a party of it. Governor's office said we want to be a part of it. So you're stuck with, we have to come up with some kind of plan. Then we are told of a time frame because you would want to do this in regards to now to take advantage of getting it in special session. Original idea is to do something. Now come these other kind of requirements by others than us of get this plan done so they can get a special session. None of the consequence of not doing this or communicating with some other people was even in the mentality. It was just get something done on black and white. Of the comparison in regards to what we put out to what Kauai put out, I asked you to go look at the Kauai plan. The simplicity of that. I could have done that too in a week if that's all that's required of us. But we were trying to identify the totality and complexity of the problem, as Mike said. The more you dug into it, more complex, you couldn't make it this simple in regards to transfer, ownership, involvement, eligibility, the whole works. So we're told just make conceptual plans so we can take advantage of a special session time. It's passed down to us from administration I accept all the criticisms of what we didn't do and should have done better. And I told you that, Senator Russell Rudderman, of how difficult it is for us. I ask you to bear with me as we try to do something to get something done. I know this is his district. I know these are your districts. What we're trying to do is get something done, present it to you for conceptual, to the legislatures asking for a special session to look at this. Was as simple as that. Naturally, the color of the paint of the house was not even thought about. We just wanted this involved. We just wanted it introduced so there was something we could work on. Sure, it's full of loopholes, but I want you to take a look at what was made in a very short time, because we were told this is your time frame. I ask for your help. You can tear this apart. The reason we're here is this: we wanted this to be the county government of Hawaii presentation to the state legislature. The people of this island needs this. And we want to work and begin with this plan.
Thank you, Mayor.
I just finished.